Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Today channel. Weekly B&B spoilers update. Eric's pick. The restlessness of Eric Forrester. Let's begin with Eric. The man did retire from Forrester Creations, as fans are aware. But everyone is aware of how much Eric still enjoys designing, and it wasn't his idea. Steffy, Rich Forrester, and Brooke Logan Forrester were all impressed by Eric's latest creations. They persisted in pressuring Eric to retire though, and he finally complied. B&B spoilers. Eric's new design completely destroys Ridge. Ridge is sorry. This collection was more than just clothing, Ridge. It was proof, apologies, and argument all woven together. Steffi tweaked a pleat and remarked, "Dad's going to love this," in a confident although slightly desperate voice. "He must. This is not a trend report. This is your voice." With her hands clenched around a mug, Brooke observed from the doorway. "It's you," she whispered. "You've always been the one." Ridge allowed their assurance to act as armor. He needed everyone to listen to him. He didn't need motivational speeches. Ridge was the one who had given the home its hand, and he needed Forrester to remember that. He had shaped that hand for decades until the fingers could support an empire. In order to keep everything intact, he had also inevitably traded pieces of himself. License agreements that had previously felt like survival, transactions that had become kind and necessary. Sitting in the calm comfort of his penthouse across town, Eric Forrester found his own hands attracted to a piece of paper he had saved for years. It was a thin sketch of a curve, a concept he would never share with anybody. Stepping back into citrus trees and museum benefit dinners had brought him a sense of tranquility. However, there was a whisper in him tonight, like an old seam that needed to be repaired. The sound of Forrester's name pulsed through his bones like an unstoppable pulse. He hadn't come to gloat or sabotage. He had come to remind the house that authority might be benevolent rather than oppressive, and that legacy could be bent. Eric had merely grinned and requested the shortest space when Anya Loran, the interim CEO, kindly inquired as to whether the house might include a quick legacy tribute during Ridge's evening. He had described it as a quiet thing. 5 looks in a tiny capsule. There's nothing to steal the show. Just a message. It turned out to be an earthquake-like note. The theater lighting was turned on in the showroom. Ridge's line debuted first, including gowns that made a woman appear unquestionable and fitted coats that kept a man erect. The courteous approbation of those with clipboards and buying lists was mumbled throughout the audience. It was great in the rigorous, methodical, and indisputable manner of a master class. With a composed bow, Ridge accepted the curtain call, his confidence tempered by the calculating typical of guys who are only familiar with major keys. The lights changed after that. Like a tide, Eric's capsule surged silently. The materials curled in on themselves like new grammar. The models moved in silhouettes with shapes Ridge had never allowed himself to explore, and the hand-worked seams revealed a hint of something older and a technique that suggested the garment's maker had kissed it. The audience, which had been courteously attentive to Ridge's performance, became still, much like when an audience recognizes an ancient deity through aroma. It was more than just nostalgia. With handmade techniques brought into the present with a clarity that gave the space a new vibe, Eric's designs were a dialogue between the past and the future. Eric's whisper developed into a demand to listen, while Ridge's labor made its own announcement. Hungry, the photographers who had been nodding at Ridge now moved their lenses. Customers who had been courteous recalculated. Ridge appeared as though he had just been informed that the rules had been altered without his consent as he stood off stage. He sensed the icy pressure of the moment, that particular public humiliation that men of a certain house fear because the audience's changing gaze, not the criticism, is what cuts. His pride folded like paper in his chest as his jaw tightened. Ridge's breath caught in a way that wasn't just angry when Eric subsequently appeared to a flurry of applause that held something complex, like reverence, surprise, and joy. It was sadness. His father had granted him both arena and reverence, but instead of the workmanship Ridge had brought, the reverence had shifted to the name Eric had placed in the room. Later, meeting Ridge in the quiet backstage area, Eric remarked, "Good show." He had a soft voice, an old guard that could be both frightening and friendly at the same time. "You accomplished all of your goals." Ridge responded bluntly, "You stole the night." A tiny slot was just that. A tiny slot. You were fully aware of what would occur. Eric put his hands together. Perhaps I did. Perhaps I wanted to remind folks that a house is more than simply a designation. It's people and labor. Sometimes people adore the label and forget the job. Ridge's pain was evident. This was not how he had wanted to argue with his father. Instead of the sight of being undermined, he had desired a quite different kind of victory, evidence of his value. However, Forrester had always been a home where tradition was a living creature that occasionally bit. In the morning, the fallout came in the form of gray rain. Customers made cautious complimentary calls. With figures presented in clinical graphs that seemed to be life or death, the board met. The capsule was popular on social media for all the reasons fashion feeds are popular. A combination of rumor and admiration. Anya conveyed information with the clarity of someone who had to check a patient's pulse before determining whether to resuscitate or let it rest. She slid analytics across the table and remarked, "Eric's capsule performed incredibly. It placed us on a demographic map that we had been attempting to access for many years." Although Eric's collection sparked the necessary discourse, Ridge's core clientele adores him. With a voice as sharp as shears, Ridge exclaimed, "You took my knight and handed it to him on a platter. I put in years of work for this." In an attempt to calm the situation, Thomas said, "You build loyalty. Your numbers are steady because of this." An increase was brought forth by Eric's collection. Both are valuable. Feeling exhausted, Ridge slumped back. Beyond the immediate numbers, there were discussions about inertia, relevancy, and the fact that, whether you like it or not, the world continues on. He had always thought that Forrester could be both market and altar. Tonight, the market was hungrier and the altar appeared older. Ridge visited his studio that night and handled clothing in a manner akin to reverence. There was no shape yet to the remorse that would follow. There was just a slight gnawing, similar to how an old wounded hurts when the weather changes. Simple tales like a vengeful father, a wayward son, or a house destroyed by pride are popular in Genoa City. Absolutes and half-answers whirled through the feed. However, the reality within the studio was more chaotic. Discussions, disagreements, and the exhausting human task of creating beautiful things. Having been brought up to defend, Ridge started doing the exact opposite. He felt a scary honesty in his art as he gazed at it as though it could speak back to him. His armor had been pride, and the first step to losing it would be regret. He arranged a private viewing for a small group of artisans and a few longtime customers who were familiar with the language of handicrafts rather than the media. In order to make the piece feel real, he intended to push the fabric against faces and reveal seams. He intended the argument to center on the workmanship experience. The scent of the area he designed was distinct from that on the runway. It was reminiscent of starch and afternoon sun, commonplace scents that indicated human presence. The gathering responded with a different type of thunder, hush followed by gradual applause. Instead of viral buzz as he displayed collars he had hand-rolled at 3 a.m, the way a man crushes patience into cloth. From the doorway, Eric observed with a look that might have been appreciation, or maybe the mature equivalent of the uneasy pride a parent has when his child grows from a reflex to a person. Then he approached and Ridge prepared for the same blow. The criticism, the lecture, the discrediting. Rather, Eric grasped his hand in a manner akin to that of a guy on the verge of a battle he didn't want to lose. Eric muttered, "You found something here. The night wasn't won by you. You've discovered your strength. You believe I need comfort." "Too quickly?" Ridge asked. "I had to show that I was still important." Eric's expression softened. "These days proof is hard cash. However, you possess something that is more durable than proof. You are knowledgeable. Most people can't even see that your hands are capable of finishing a seam." For the first time that week, Ridge felt something release his chest as he spoke. At that time, regret was a companionable thing. Not only was he ashamed of being so hurt by an older man's victory, but he also realized that he had let himself grow afraid of being irrelevant. At the potential expense of the very thing that had inspired him to become a designer, he had taken decisions about licensing, scalability, and safe lines that had kept the business profitable. The true regret was that he had no idea how much that cost the house he cherished. Ridge worked in novel methods for weeks, teaching apprentices in a small studio space and using his hands to teach the curve of a sleeve, which caused trainees to bend forward. He answered phones, canceled appointments, and listened to elderly weavers who had contributed to the Forrester narrative prior to the company being a household name. He turned down a substantial license offer, but it seemed like one more blow to his craft. Additionally, he started drafting a brief manifesto for the house that would combine profit and protection, business and art. In order to support tiny ateliers in maintaining their independence, he suggested limited edition partnerships with artisan mills, apprenticeships, and the creation of a forgiveness fund. He drew basic sketches with margins and purpose, and he placed numbers next to idealism. He dubbed it the Atelier Return. He anticipated a fight, and one did occur, but it was not the one he had anticipated. Eric paid attention. He listened with a heart that remembered hunger and a mind that recognized patterns, the kind of listening that comes from decades of trial and error. Ridge was not undermined by him. He offered resources and a public pledge, the one thing good fathers occasionally do when they are not attempting to exert control. In an office still reeking of a lifetime of Forrester choices, Eric remarked, "You lead it. I'll pay for it. When it's helpful, I'll utilize my name. When you need to take the lead, I'll back off." Ridge experienced a sense of relief as his old anxiety took shape. It wouldn't make the pain of the gala night go away, nor would it make up for the hours he'd spent comforting himself into submission. However, it was a first step toward integrating his life with the home, in a way that respected both. Why? Because old households rarely provide gifts without a record, Ridge inquired. Eric grinned in the manner of acknowledging a little reality. Because I recall what it's like to see someone perform something lovely without being there to witness it. Additionally, a man eventually wants to be valuable for something other than being morally upright. The house put on a new exhibition a few months later. Ridge, with the assistance of artisans, apprentices, and quietly Eric's support, established a steady, deeply felt line rather than a cosmic collision of power plays. With finishes that the owner could fix, fabric selections sourced from tiny mills, and a running credit in every look that listed the maker's name, the line combined technique and conscience. The applause was deep and sincere on the night the collection walked. Customers placed orders for a longer relationship rather than just today, according to critics who wrote about regeneration. As Ridge accepted his bow, he had both the old pride and something new, humility intertwined with purpose. After the performance, Eric discovered him in the cramped, untidy backstage area where applause and work collide and become human. The two men, who had once been adversaries and father and son, stood silently for a moment before becoming somewhat of allies. "You succeeded," Eric murmured. Ridge put his palm on his own sleeve seam and let out a giggle that was on the verge of tears. Yes, regret had arrived, but it had not been in vain. It was now a teacher. "We succeeded," he clarified, glancing across the studio floor where the machines hummed as apprentices joked while folding fabric. "We succeeded." The core of his previous embarrassment became clear to him at that moment. He had thought that being important meant never giving up control. He was mistaken. Allowing a house to transcend his ego was essential to becoming significant, truly significant. The city went on outside. Forrester would be different on the inside. It would be freer, messier, and tighter. Ridge's remorse had taught him what to value and how to behave, which is what sadness occasionally does. Although Eric's small capsule had been struck by lightning, the dwelling had not been completely destroyed. Rather, it had ignited a fire that could be extinguished. Standing side by side, the two men, one older, the other damaged everywhere a legacy leaves its mark, watched as a new generation of hands learned how to put the world back together. That was the only kind of victory that mattered to Ridge. We are here for the chaos as Eric Forrester gives Katie Logan his designs. Next week on Bold and the Beautiful, Eric Forrester decides to join Katie Logan's design house after a pivotal meeting. Eric is currently competing after Ridge drove his father out of Forrester. Additionally, Daphne agrees to Carter's proposal, RJ returns with a new identity, and to Electra's dismay, Dylan is hired at Forrester. "You want me out," said Eric Forrester. "All right. I'll go create for your adversary." Fans of Bold and the Beautiful, the retaliation is poetic. When Katie Logan pleads, "I don't want to pit you against your son," Eric Forrester doesn't care during their pivotal encounter the following week. He tells her, "This is what I want." Ridge's head is going to blow up, and Eric Forrester is joining Katie's Logan fashion house. Let's review how we got here. Ridge threw Eric a patronizing little party and essentially instructed him to go home and relax after deciding his father needed to be retired from the firm that bears Eric's name. Eric was heartbroken. The man isn't prepared to give up, so he has been designing in secret nevertheless. And right now, Eric is currently bringing those concepts to the fledgling fashion brand of Katie Logan. The fashion house that broke up didn't want to be there. The chef's kiss is poetic justice. We must discuss how flawless this is. Eric founded Forrester Creations with Steffy, but Ridge forced him out of the company. From the beginning, Brooke has been making fun of Katie's sister and telling her that she won't succeed in her fashion house aspirations. And right now, Logan will be designed by Eric Forrest. Eric didn't even need to be pitted against Ridge by Katie. When Ridge determined his father was too old to help, he accomplished that all by himself. Ridge answered, "No thanks, Dad, go retire." And Eric was there, ready and willing to continue producing. Congratulations, Ridge. Your dad is still making things. Not for you, though. Eric's dissatisfaction has been expertly portrayed by John McCook, and it will be incredibly enjoyable to witness him decide to compete. Eric Forrester's creations at Logan, a fashion house? Brooke is about to lose her mind. Ridge will go insane. What about Katie? The most renowned clothes designer in history will soon join Katie's team. Play the game. Modified. Brooke and Ridge will combine. Can you picture what will happen next week? When did Ridge learn that his father had joined the enemy? Does Brooke realize that Eric Forrest is now a part of the fashion firm she attempted to destroy? There will be brutal conversations throughout the family supper. Ridge believed he was acting in Eric's best interests, so he pushed him out. In reality, though, he gave Katie Logan the most powerful weapon she could have against Forrester Creations. In the fashion world, Eric's name alone is powerful. His creations are renowned. And now Katie's home will benefit from all that talent and prestige. We're here for every minute of the repercussions because Ridge played himself.